and welcome back to the Photo Editor. In this episode, we will be looking at a close-up portrait I took of my dog Odie, one of my favourite models, and we will be looking at how a single flash unit can be used effectively in indoor settings. As always, if you want to see more of this show, please hit the thumbs up and tap subscribe as well as the bell notification so you can hear about when new episodes are released. They come out twice a week now. And let's get started with editing. Hello everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the Photo Editor. So, I will be again using one of my favourite subjects, Odie, our little Dachshund, who, if you're a regular viewer, will know is one of my favourite subjects. For one thing, he doesn't cost much to model. He charges only in treats. So, what's special about these two images is that I was actually beginning to use more of a flash indoors. Partly because of COVID, I've been doing a lot more indoor photography and experimenting with the limitations of space as well as light, especially when I do more indoor work. And one little hack, if you're new to flash photography, that is quite effective, is if you are actually able to point your flash upwards to the ceiling. This is particularly relevant if you have white walls. Instead of having what often occurs in a lot of mobile phone, or if you're in America or some other places, cell phone photographs when you use the flash, instead of looking very washed out and overexposed in the front and whitened out, the flash, by bouncing off the ceiling and around the surrounding walls, actually gives you a much more balanced look like we see here. And I honestly don't know why they don't incorporate that much more into a lot of mobile phone flash design. So have some sort of indoor room flash that's actually built onto the top of the phone. So maybe I'll write to the people at Apple and other places and give them my thoughts on the topic. But let's get on to editing now. So, of the two pictures, I think I am going to go with this portrait up here. So it's I like it. It's nice and up close. Odie, because he's a Dachshund and has quite a long nose, it's actually can be a little tricky at times getting all of his head in focus. And occasionally, I've had a couple of nice shots that would have otherwise been quite nice turn out bad just because his nose or part of his long head has just gotten a little bit out of focus. But this time, partly because of his angle, he's all in focus, and I was able to get the aperture quite low so I could get the nice bokeh surrounding him. This is actually using one of my favorite lenses, a Super Takumar 55mm from the 70s, and so even though it's many decades old, like my dad would have been about 10 years old when it was in the shops, the clarity and the sharpness is excellent. So I may even make a color version of this. I know that's against my usual habits, but let's do one of our usual black and white ones for now. Ooh, I love the glow on his nose and on his cheeks with the whiskers. It looks excellent. We actually brought Odie from the vet yesterday for one of his usual vaccinations. The vet commented on how beautiful and healthy his coat is. Yeah, so it seems like the red makes him really bright. If I were to go for this option, I do like how his face and the background is quite vivid, partly because the couches in the background were a reddish color, and I guess because it was in indoor conditions, maybe there was a slight reddish tint, so maybe that's why it's popping out a bit more with the red filter, but I will have to dim down his eyes a bit just because they're a bit too big. Even though by Dashi's standards, Odie's eyes are not too big, there is quite a lot of room for reflection. The yellow is a lot more balanced, I'll give it that. So, I suppose a good rule is if you're trying to focus on each element of the picture as you go through different filters and work out which one applies best. And like even just the neutral is very good, so maybe I'll go without a filter at all this time. The tone is so rich along his face. So maybe I'll just select a film type. Yeah, so I might go for the Acros 100, one of our favorites on this program. It makes one look that a bit brighter, but you get all the beautiful richness on his really good coat. Yeah, so even neutral's good, but yeah, I think. Maybe Fuji Neopan, but I'll increase the grain a bit. It's like I'm sort of manufacturing my own film type. Let's see if I can make it a bit softer. Okay, yeah, let's save that one. Now I'm quite happy with the composition. He sort of fits. Odie's head sort of fits into the rule of thirds angle almost. Like I'll just turn on the grid just so he's not on the third line, but he's close to it. So he's kind of centrally compositioned. Whereas, he's just a bit off, just to add a bit of intrigue. And that tends to be how I like to angle a lot of things at the moment. Now, I don't feel inclined to make many adjustments to the background. Everything is quite unfocused just because of the speed at which I had the lens. And it's strange, like even more, maybe just because the thumbnail was a bit smaller, but even now the more of Odie's head seems to be that bit out of focus because I think I had it at probably only like maybe 2.4 or 2 aperture, whatever the lowest aperture on the lens is, as I recall. So I think first we'll try and make the fur along the bridge of the snout a little sharper. Trying to avoid his eyes just because they're already quite bright. I don't want to accidentally overblow them. Now along the tan sections of his mouth, I'm gonna add clarity to that as well. But I want to use it with a separate brush, just because they're two different colors and they're sort of in a different focus range. So good to have the separate control. I like how the clarity makes his whiskers really stand out. I'll try and up the black along the nose a bit because it is a little bit out of focus. Obviously, because of the length of Odie's head. And I might up the dehaze a bit. It doesn't magically make it in focus. This isn't looking like a forensic examination photograph on CSI and just the clearest image magically appears from a pixelated security, but you can make some little tweaks that can be surprising at times. So the dehaze seems to make the nose go quite dark, so won't apply it too much. Yeah, that's good. Now we'll add some texture as well onto the fur on the bridge of the nose. Now this kind of makes some... if I apply too much texture, Odie's fur actually starts to look a little coarser than what it is. He has a very smooth coat, so I'm just going to throttle back a bit. Just enough to make it a bit more noticeable on the screen. Okay, we'll brighten up his eyes a bit now, I think. And no, we'll use highlights. So particularly this one in the depths of shadow here. So on the darker one, we'll add a bit of white. So this way they look a bit more balanced out. Because it's kind of a sort of glamour portrait, it's kind of okay if the lighting doesn't necessarily meet perfect logic of nature. And it's kind of the same logic that a lot of filmmakers, when they're making rom-com type films, work as well, where the lighting is really sharp and even all the time. Well, that's clever. I just realized that the drag function on my Apple mouse actually lets me expand and contract the brush. It's funny, the little secrets that elude you when you don't always look at the manual properly. Okay, now on the nice floppy ear here, we'll add a bit of clarity. It won't make that much of a difference just because it's fairly out of focus, but it might just add a little bit of pop. Yeah, so that's a quite nice colour. There is a bit of a gleam on the nose here that may have come from brushing off on the ear adjustment, but I think it works within the confines of the image. I'm starting to not like how his fur looks on the nose bridge is looking a little bit too coarse, so I might take the texture setting a bit further back, so I'll just see if this is the one that I was using. Yeah, so that's a little softer looking now. So maybe on this section here, I'll see if I can dehaze a little bit. Although it's not the end of the world if it doesn't work out. I could get used now to this finger on the mouse drag adjust of the brush feature. Thanks, Apple. Might add a bit of clarity on the top of the head here. See if that works. So it might make it stand out too much, or it might just work. So the effect isn't too overwhelming. Yeah, it works pretty well, probably because it's starting to fall out of focus. You get a nice blending. Now, finally, the eyes. I might try adding a higher clarity to that as well, but again, it may or may not work. Just because of how large his eyes are, although they're small by the standards of his breed. If you like Dachshunds, or Dashies, or Dachshunds, or I get the pronunciation wrong, but if you do like dogs like Odie, an account I love following on Instagram is called Lulu the Mini Dachshund. And so this lady Dashi with lots of puppies, and I think also a little duckling that her owner has as well, so that's an interesting combination of pets. I actually don't mind this high clarity. The eyes on Odie are so expressive, but I might add some higher clarity and maybe again some extra brightness to balance out this one on the right here. Yeah, so starting to get more even. Now, in the lower section of the right eye, it's still a bit dark, so I might even sort of try... Hello, Odie. I might even try lightening up in that lower half as well. Now, when you're doing focused work, you need to make sure that you look again at the whole piece afterwards, that it balances out adequately. Otherwise, it can look very hit and miss, sort of all over the place and hodgepodge. I think that was our cat trying to break into the room just now. Yeah, so that's more balanced, and the lighting hasn't spilled over too much into the surrounding fur, so it's pretty good. Still on the leftermost of the right eye, I want to add a bit of extra light just so that it balances again with the reflection coming from onto this left eye here. It's sort of rare that I'm doing this much precision work, but I kind of like to have the eyes balanced, especially when you're focused so close on them. Yeah, so that is more balanced. It probably doesn't have the perfect shimmer that the left eye has, but it can probably satisfy the main balance, because I think in practice people tend to look for sort of evenness and symmetry when they're viewing a picture. And so I do like the balance, and after all, his eye was in a fairly dark shadow to begin with, so that we've got it now looking fairly even. I think looks quite nice. I've been kind of hoarding a bit of flash photography equipment and umbrella and the like, so I'll be doing a lot more of this sort of model-like photography with my liver treat paying models. So I look forward to doing some more work like this. Even though this picture does go to show that to get some good lighting, especially indoors, you don't necessarily need a lot of good equipment. Quite often, if it's in a larger room, the natural light coming in from the window can have a short range of effectiveness. But if you have even just one flash, and they don't necessarily cause that much, but they're, for those that have sort of given up on flashes because they think it always makes their subject look washed out, quite often one of the best cheats is actually to direct it against the ceiling. And you often see this at weddings, the photographer going around with the flash focused to upwards, so they have the portable kit and it gets a nice balanced light. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I certainly have, not least because of my one of my favourite models to work with. As always, if you like this program, please hit the thumbs up button and tap subscribe, and I look forward to talking with you again next time. Thank you for watching.